here today at the Asia Venture Philanthropy Networks Conference in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I'm here with Eugenia Koh. Now, Eugenia is the Global Head of Sustainable Finance for the Consumer Private and Business Bank of Standard Chartered. That's quite some title.
Yeah.
Eugenia, congratulations.
Exactly, quite a mouthful.
Well, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get to be with Standard Chartered with a title like that? What's your background?
Yeah, so actually my background is in comms and marketing. So I started in kind of public relations, but also did quite a bit of pro bono consulting for nonprofits. And that really sparked my interest in kind of like the impact space. And I've been quite active in volunteering as well on a personal basis. And then I fell into kind of CSR. And when I was in CSR, I first came into contact with the concept of impact investing. And, you know, the doors kind of opened for me to also include impact investing as part of my portfolio. And I think that was really like the start of the journey. Impact investing then, some 10 years back, was just really a new concept out of Asia. It's since grown quite a bit. And from impact investing, then it's broadened into kind of more the public markets investing space for sustainable finance. So really, you know, the doors open, opportunities came about, and just jumped into them to get into the space.
What is the difference between ESG and impact investing?
Yeah, so, you know, with ESG, it's really about environmental, social, and governance considerations as part of thinking about your investments. Impact investing is a bit more specialized. It's about kind of intentionality, additionality, a lot more outcomes focused. So you could have ESG as part of many kind of public market funds, right? Or if you buy into any kind of company, you should look at kind of the ESG metrics that they are trailing at, because that helps you just have a better sense of the holistic nature of a company. Impact is a bit more kind of focused. You know, not every company you would say is an impact investment. They need to be really kind of contributing towards some of these outcomes-based results for you to be then qualifying them as impact.
It's interesting, you've used a couple of keywords there. One of them was metrics and the other one is results. And, you know, at this conference that we're at here in Malaysia, a lot of the conversation has been around measuring impact. And I think this is specifically relevant for you because part of your role includes the due diligence of sustainable investment solutions. So how do you measure that?
Yeah, so, you know, for us, what's really interesting is that we're not a product manufacturer. So we don't have our own products. And what we do is we work then with everyone out there in the industry, a lot of the asset managers, a lot of the fund providers, the solution providers, to be able to then bring in the best of breed products that we can then offer to clients. And so the way we measure it is through evaluating our asset managers and looking at kind of their measurements, whether they are kind of thoughtful about the way they look at evaluating impact. As you can imagine, impact is something that is very broad, and it can be quite nuanced, right? Because you could have an environmental impact that is positive, but potentially a more negative social impact, right? If you
it's that trade-off, right?
Yeah, and how do you kind of think about that trade-off? How do you reconcile it? Are you aware of like the tensions that are playing against each other? And how do you finally come to your conclusion about what gets into your investment portfolio? And those are the kind of questions that we probe when we speak to asset managers or portfolio managers that we are considering solutions with, because then the way they think about it is important because it shapes how they invest and what goes into the eventual investment.
How do you come to those conclusions? Like when you're talking about that kind of trade-off, you know, the trade-off between the social and the environmental, which can often be quite large. And if you put it into context, it can be a whole community, a whole village of people having to move or lose their livelihoods or how do you balance those kind of questions? Yeah,
so I think what's very important and where it's been quite encouraging is that as companies have become more thoughtful about it, they've also been able to find solutions, right? So a good example is, you know, with a lot of renewable companies, obviously they have a very positive environmental impact because they're lowering kind of carbon emissions. But to your point, you know, there could be communities, right, which are slightly displaced, a lot of agriculture land that is kind of given up because you're building these kind of like wind and solar farms, right? And actually what's been quite interesting is that a lot of the thoughtful solar companies have decided that, you know, instead of using, let's say, machinery to kind of mow the grass that they are building these solar panels on, they're going to be getting the farmers involved, and they're using sheep to be able then to kind of eat the grass. So then you don't need the lawnmowers, and you're still kind of employing the farmers in a very productive way, and they're contributing towards this cause, right?
Yeah.
So just being, I think, innovative in some of the solutions, and being able to bring the community along, so that, you know, while they lose their agriculture land, they actually find new ways, right, of employability, and getting involved. And so at many times, if we're creative enough, I think we can find win-win solutions.
We used to talk a lot about, and we still do to a certain point, about greenwashing, but it seems that the conversation has moved now towards impact washing. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, you know, I think greenwashing, unfortunately, alongside impact washing, is still very real today. And the most important piece is really around transparency, you know, and that's what we find is critical. A lot of times in this space, because it's so subjective and everyone has their own interpretations of what impact is, right? The ability to be able to kind of present it in a really honest and accurate fashion to investors in terms of what that is actually deriving for you is critical as a first step. As an example, you know, if I think even about like the ESG space, right? A lot of times people kind of say, oh, you know, I'm so disillusioned because this ESG fund that I've been sold isn't actually generating impact, you know, but actually, if you buy into an ESG fund, it's really not about impact, you know. I mean, impact could be an eventual consequence of it, but actually a lot of the ESG funds should be positioned as opportunities that help you achieve better risk management, as an example, right? Many times, even the claim that they outperform is a bit of an overstatement, because, you know, in the mid to long term, they could possibly outperform. But, you know, to say that ESG factors singularly drive performance is definitely an overstatement. And even if you look at the academic research out there, it is pretty mixed. But where everyone agrees is that you have to look at ESG from a risk mitigation perspective because of regulation, because of reputational risk. And if you don't, your portfolios will not be as resilient, you know, so that aspect of kind of really understanding when you get into sustainable investing, what that kind of type of investment is and where it sits and what it can achieve for you is critical. And I think that therefore it really starts with kind of clear communications and just that transparency, right, of what goes into it, what you can expect as a reasonable outcome. That's the first step to mitigating impact washing.
Okay. All right, Eugenia, it's been such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much for talking to us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Eugenia Koh with us there from Standard Chartered.